Howdy pushers, this is Grant Lindenberg with another episode of Pushing Cardboard. How's it going? Summer is here, it's getting hotter, and I'm getting grumpier. When it gets to be 30 degrees Celsius here, it's about 85 Fahrenheit for those struggling to convert. That's about enough for me. I've definitely got Nordic blood. But that's all fine as I create this podcast in my cool basement. So, episode 21. This features an interview with Sean Druelinger, designer of Lock and Load's Point Blank Vias for Victory tactical card game. We'll talk about his history as a designer and a gamer as well, and just what it is that makes Point Blank unique. And then I'll dive into Commands and Colors Napoleonics. Yep, an oldie but a goodie. And it's getting a repackaging at GMT, so it's a good time to talk about it. Hey, if you've got a question you'd like answered or a topic discussed, drop by the website or drop me a line. I'd be happy to add a mailbag portion to the podcast. And topic ideas are always appreciated, even when I can't act on them. So, news and what I've been playing. Probably the biggest news this past while was the Origins game convention just happened. I wasn't there as it's just too far east for me, but by the sounds of things, Wargaming had a pretty great turnout this year. GMT has put a couple more games on the Rally the Troops website. Andean Abyss and Red Flag Over Paris joined Nevsky in Wilderness War. I'm not sure if it's a fact or a rumor, but I heard that the plan was to put up only a single game from each series, so there'll be no Fire in the Lake or Inferno on Rally the Troops, which is a bit of a shame that we might not see our favorite titles, but you can understand Rally the Troops is a step up from Vassal that it enforces the rules, so you can easily play without owning the game if you're a dirtbag. Anyway, check those out on Rally the Troops. I think it's rally-the-troops.org maybe. Oh, just search it, you'll find it. The other news from GMT is that Mr. President has been arriving on doorsteps with a thud, as in it's a huge heavy box and it's a big game. I haven't tried it as solo games aren't my thing, but it seems to be very well received as well. And they announced a few additions to P500. Imperial Fever is a deck builder for 1 to 5 players set between 1880 and 1915. And there's a new volume of Fields of Fire announced, the Parachute Regiment. Over at Revolution, orders are now being taken for Eagles in the Sky and a Grand Havoc. I recommend the former and have ordered the latter. So what's on the table? Well, I spent a lot of time this month with Eagles in the Sky from Revolution as I was making a playthrough video. Check it out, it's already up on my YouTube channel. I do a complete 2 versus 2 dogfight. It lasts 90 minutes, but I think the game generally won't take that long. A lot of it is me explaining as I go. And of course, that was just a dogfight. Up next for me is to try the campaign game, and maybe shoot some video of that as well. In PBM games, we finished Scenario 11 of an Undaunted Normandy. I managed a slim victory in that one, and now we're on to the final scenario in the box. I'm sure we're going to probably try either try the North Africa box or maybe skip ahead to the Stalingrad box, maybe even the Battle of Britain box, who knows. They've got a lot of good games out. I've got 2 scenarios of Commands and Colors Napoleon still going, and I have an historical ASL and 2 scenarios of ASL still going on. In the historical ASL game, I broke out the air support rules for the first time in 20 plus years. 2 near misses on his panzers with my fighter bombers, but next turn they'll be back to strafe his troops, so all is well. In American Civil War action, my Blind Swords, A Greater Victory, and Black Swan, A Most Fearful Sacrifice continue. The module for A Most Fearful Sacrifice has been a bit challenging, especially for PBM play. I don't think the module designer there was thinking of PBM at all. It was challenging enough for me to dive in and figure out how to edit vassal modules to behave as you might find convenient. So in the end, I got to say thanks for the learning opportunity there. I've made my own version or my own tweaks to that module. I'm also still playing Combat Commander and Storm over Arnhem and Last 100 Yards, and via good old email, I almost forgot, Not War But Murder and Absolute War. On the actual table, I of course tried out Point Blank V is for Victory from Lock and Load. Interesting system. It's a bit like they took Lock and Load Tactical and turned it into a card game. Lots of touches inspired by Upfront there as well. So a lot of games ongoing, fairly heavily weighted towards World War II and the American Civil War, I suppose. I guess I should try to diversify things a bit more again. In terms of new games to the collection, another slower month, I should say, thankfully. Maybe I'll finally catch up. I tried Noble Knight for the first time and it went well, even with shipping to Canada. I got a game I'd been looking for a while, Age of Dogfights World War One. I'll try out the system, decide if I need any more of the expansions. And as I was pursuing their sale, which was ongoing at the time, I bought a copy of Panzer Grenadier Africa Corps. I haven't tried that system yet, despite my friend Joshua raving about it, so it was time. I don't have many Avalanche Press games, period, as they haven't been big supporters of Vassal in the past, and that definitely limits my play possibilities, but I look forward to checking it out. And then the only other thing that arrived was Undaunted Battle of Britain. I can't wait to see how they've adapted the Undaunted system for the Air War. It's going to be fun, guaranteed, given the amount of fun we've had with other Undaunted games. Books. Well, not exactly war game related, but the book I'm going to talk about was recommended to me by Mike Zarka, a terrific Vassal PBM opponent of mine. The book in question is The Company. It's a detailed history of the early years of the Hudson's Bay Company. It traces the fur trade, mainly beaver, and how it extended out from the St. Lawrence and from Hudson's Bay and eventually all the way to the west coast and south, a large chunk of land previously called Old Oregon. The Hudson's Bay Company opened forts all along the way west and were the only outposts for the British Empire in that part of North America. It's fascinating to see how the company was a commercial enterprise but also functioned as a colonial presence as well, staking out claims for the eventual division of the North between the US and Britain. As well, it gives a fairly detailed history of the indigenous peoples who cooperated and profited from the early fur trade, some tribes even changing their whole way of life to adapt to new trade patterns, and then how that symbiotic relationship was squandered when a new head of the company was too racist to understand the value of it all. As well as more and more land is claimed by one side or the other, the book is at pains to remind us which indigenous people were pushed off their land and never consulted. I recommend The Company as a great read for anyone interested in early Canadian colonial history. Okay, right, let's move on to the main course, my interview with Sean Druelinger. Sean is the designer of Point Blank, V is for Victory at Log and Load Publishing. He's also the lead developer on their Nations at War series and has done a couple of expansions for their Tank on Tank game. I spoke to Sean through the wonders of the internet at his home in Maryland. So here it is. Hello, everybody. I'm Grant Lenneberg here in Calgary, and I'm delighted to say I'm interviewing today Sean. Is it Druelinger or Druelinger?
Yep, Druelinger's good.
Druelinger, great. Sean is a designer and developer associated with Lock and Load Publishing. How long have you been with Lock and Load?
I met Dave probably late 2015-ish. Or early beginning of 2015. I'm sorry.
So that's a not long after he started the company after he left Matrix Games, I guess.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird way he got a hold of me. I initially was going to do a module for Mark Walker, called Stalin's Triumph, which is out under Lock and Load Publishing, so for the Nations of War series. And Mark and I kind of lost touch, and out of the blue, David called me and asked me if, did I do any work with Stalin's Triumph? And I said, yeah, I was working with Mark on it, because I didn't know that he had bought the company, and I didn't know Mark sold it to him, and I didn't know Mark was working with him for a while. But then Mark stopped working with David, and I think he went and formed Flying Pigs, and then that project was still open. So Dave said, well, how about I give you the Nations at War series and you develop it and redo it and all that? I said, yeah, I'm not going to turn that down. I said, sure. Yeah.
Had you been designing before then? Like, how much was this diving into the deep end?
So, well, I've always been a budding designer, throughout, because I've been playing war games since I was probably 12. So I'm, upper 50s now. So, long time. But I had been writing some articles for Line of Fire, and I've been designing scenarios and things like that. And I had designed a scenario for a Russian scenario for Nations at War, and brought it to Mark Walker at the WBC at the time it was in Lancaster, and we played it. He liked it, so he kind of gave me a green light to go ahead and start, designing it and developing it. And then the whole company transformation happened, and then Dave kind of shifted everything to me, and I was drinking from a fire hose at that point, because we redid all of the modules. So we redid and made them version 2.0. So it was White Star, Rising, Desert Heat, and then Star Trek.
Right. It sounds like a lot of designers I speak with, they talk about how they got the design bug early, just as a player. They wanted to start tinkering with games that they were playing, or you get ideas of like, well, this is a pretty good game, but I think I've got a better idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of games that are out there. A lot of new designers start putting together that are based on other games or other systems, and they put it out. And I don't want to say it's a rehash or anything like that, because a lot of there's new ideas, or they add something really cool to a system that was, popular, and then they made it even better.
Right.
You take the Storm Over series, the MMP stuff. Those never get tired. I never get tired of those games. I love all those games.
Same here. The original 4 from Avalon Hill, I love, and then they go. The MMP's got some, and then Revolution with Mike Ranella has done just a ton of different area impulse games, both kind of small, quick plays, and then big giant ones as well. There's something about area impulse. It's I never get tired of that either. They're quicker to play and easy.
Yeah, I enjoy them, and definitely like some of the ones that have the card assist component to it as well. That kind of gives it. I got to play a early design copy of the Dien Ben Phu game from MMP, and that was the cards were just great in that, and that game was just a massacre of it was, if you're like stockpiling. I had a huge pile of dead Vietnamese soldiers that the French had annihilated. I think I still lost, but that was a really great game, and that was I think that was that, and Storm Over Stalingrad was the other card assist game. So
yeah, Storm Over Stalingrad is the first one I played that had that added cards into the area impulse system. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so very interesting.
Yeah, that was good. And the there was a MMP game that they put out in a magazine, the War One game. I forgot what it was called. And then Storm Over Normandy, which I think is the best of the entire series. It's one of my favorites.
Great! I haven't checked that one out. I got to get that one then. Just what I need, an area impulse game.
Yeah, another area impulse game. But they did a really good job with that. And if I like Breakout Normandy, and that's a great game. But Storm Over Normandy is more playable in an evening.
Oh, great! Well, I'll look for it. Did you play computer war games as well before? Like, what was your history as a war gamer?
Well, I think the very first computer war game I ever played was on a Commodore 64 called Panzer Jagd or something like that, and it was I loved it. It was you actually could move things around with a joystick, the pieces and stuff, and that was fun. But I own a lot of computer war games. I like to dabble in them a little bit. They catch my interest, but sometimes they're kludgy, and I struggle sometimes staying focused on doing a 10-hour John Tiller game Turn or something like that, or some of the tactical games are good. Like obviously I like the Lock and Loads online stuff, and Nations of War online is getting
Oh,
a redo. So
what I miss with the computer games is they rarely make mistakes the way human opponents do. I
yeah,
like the fun of catching each other in mistakes. That's part of the fun
yeah,
of
there's some.
wargaming.
Yeah, you forget a mechanic. I mean, or you forget to move something or whatever, and there's the human element that is, I think, missed in computer games. I like the social interaction of a war game or things like that. So you don't get that in with computer games as much.
Um, so you played a lot of games this growing up, and then you get this gig with Lock and Load, and you start with Nations of War, which is I guess that's I haven't played Nations of War yet. That's the platoon level series,
Yep.
which makes it a little different than the Lock and Load tactical, which is I assume is a squad size.
Yes. Well, yeah, Lock and Load Tactical is squad level and a lot more rules. And to me, I think as any gamer would know, the smaller the scale, the more numerous the rules.
ASL player, so
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, I love ASL. But Nations at War is lighter. The appeal there's a large appeal to it for like the World of Wars series in general. That kind of came out first with um, Mark's old company, and all the stats are on the counter. So that was the thing with the Nations of War. Also, all the things you need to know to play the game are on a counter. What you need. How many dice you roll to hit, and how the distance, and what do you need to save. So it plays like a miniature game. So there's an appeal there.
right. That makes a big difference to have if everything's on like that's even one step above having everything on play aids. If it's everything's on the map board and the counters and you're good to go. It's also got a different sort of an activation system than most tactical games, as I understand it.
Yeah, it's a chit pool. So, but you can use chits, or there's cards that come with it. So, I think the new thing now is Dave likes to do the chit pool piece, but use playing cards as your draw.
Right. That's very different for like I played a lot of different tactical games, and that's going to give it a much more interactive feel then.
Yeah, and it's good for solo too because you don't know who's going to go next.
Right, right, of course. And how many games have you worked on in that series then?
3 and the compendium. So
Right.
the compendium is like an expansion. I suppose it has a lot of modules. I mean, a lot of scenarios in it, and there are map boards and new units and things like that. So we wrote a lot of scenarios.
And how many games or expansion? I guess is it like a base game and then everything else is an expansion?
Every game except the compendium is playable on its own.
Right. And how many are there in the series now?
So 3. So there's White Star Rising. Yeah, which is
for some reason I thought there was more in the Nations of War than just 3.
No. There's more discussed and more planned, but we haven't produced them yet.
Right. Like all these series, it's like you put a balloon up, and if it floats, then there's gonna be a bunch more balloons after it.
Yeah, it has a good following in general, but it's not the following that Lock and Load Tactical has. So if they put a Lock and Load Tactical module out, there's insta buys for a lot of folks, and
right.
I think it probably needs to be more in line with the newer World at War series that they redid by. You probably got a copy of that from Lock and Load, but storming the gap or something like that, or not, or Dave's going to kill me. I'm forgetting the titles of the games. but it's a Keith Tracton game, and Jeff Schulte, and they did a good job with platoon level. I'll call it modern, but it's like the in the 80s. So
Right,
it was
right. Yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of traction in that space. Like I like to call that the Cold War gone hot space, where it's like sort of 85 to 95, somewhere in there, right? It's
Yeah, well, it was so that I was in the military during that time. So I think there's a lot of folks who were in the military during that time, and the Warsaw Pact was our, the enemy that we trained against, or
yeah,
in scenarios
yeah,
and stuff. So
sure.
I could
Until
see the
'89,
appeal of
it
that.
all seemed pretty real.
Yeah,
And yeah, I was on somebody else's podcast last year, and both the host and the other guest were ex-service guys and they were like, that was totally their jam as well, for sure.
yeah,
That makes sense.
It's fun. If you ever get out to some of the cons that Keith and Jeff go to, they set up huge maps, and you can kind of come in and play a couple turns, and then leave, or man a company or two, and they have these big battles, and they're a lot of fun to play. So.
Sounds great. I haven't played any lock and load tactical yet, but it's on my list for this year. Well, we always have a list, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like the older I get, the more I realize the less time I have, but that's the way she goes.
Mm-hmm.
So you came over and you worked on that. You also worked on a series called Tank on Tank, not as just on expansions or on the system itself, or
yeah, that was Peter Bogusarian's design, and all I worked on was some expansions that Dave wanted me to put together. So I put together an Eastern Front version and a Western Front version, designed some new maps, did some kind of fun scenarios.
Is that individual AFVs, or is that platoon scale as well?
They're individual AFVs.
Right. So tactical armor tactical system.
Yeah, it's very beer and pretzels. So
right.
It's a good game to maybe introduce to someone who might be interested in the hobby and wants to play something that's not going to be 2 hours, 3 hours long. You can play a game.
I find a lot of appeal in that now. When I was 14 or whatever, my first like real war game after Milton Bradley was Tobruk. And so that was like, AFV, tactical AFVs, but it was like roll to hit, roll to see if you penetrate, look at you, check what angle you're on. It was, I don't know what I dove in at the deep end. It felt like for a 14-year-old at the time.
My first foray into wargaming, well, I'll tell you the story. My mother found a Dungeons and Dragons group for me to play. I was 12, and it was I grew up in a town called Aberdeen in Maryland. So Maryland's kind of the breadbasket of wargaming, I call it, at least.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so I fell in with the Aberdeen Wargamers group, and some of the names that went there were guys like Neil Schlaffer, and he designed Enemy in Sight, and he did a lot of major playtesting with Upfront, and some of the other names were like Don Greenwood and Craig Taylor. I'd never seen them there, but actually Don, I know Don. He lives in the next town over for me, but he's come over to my house and schooled me on Breakout Normandy a couple times. So he's
I think there's a lot of celebration
name dropping right now.
No, that's all good. I'm glad you brought up Don Greenwood. There's a lot of there's a lot of chatter always about sort of the golden age of wargaming, or the first golden age of wargaming in the 70s and the 80s, and the two big powerhouse design houses. And I always feel like Don Greenwood somehow doesn't get the credit he deserves. He was a major force, and he took that, for example, he took Courtney Allen's area impulse system and made it into the Stalingrad and the Normandy game, and those are like two of my favorite all-time games.
Yeah. The Turning Point Stalingrad is a wonderful game, and it's one of those games you leave set up for weeks because it takes a very long time to play it. But it brings a lot of enjoyment. But anyway, so I was going to this club and I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it was an every other week thing. So I accidentally showed up on a week that they weren't playing Dungeons and Dragons, and the one of the guys there, Neil Schlaffer, who's sort of a mentor to me, said, "Well, I'll teach you how to play Squad Leader." And I said, "Sure, guys, dudes and tanks. So yeah, I'm in." So
Yeah.
I played, I learned it. I didn't do very well, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I started playing from there, and I ended up playing, all the basics, the
So
Russian
in
campaign. And
so like Squad Leader was you cut your teeth on Squad Leader.
at 12 years old, yeah,
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 that's
it was great.
it's funny. It's got such a reputation that an ASL as being a complicated game, but the basic system is elegant and simple and easy to follow. It's just all the chrome that you can
Yeah,
get lost
it's a very natural, intuitive, I would say, to me, how to play. There's a lot of rules diving though on certain things that today I would if I'm playing it, I need to rules dive on a lot of things, and in particular. But and some folks, hats off to them if they can memorize all of that stuff. And a lot of those folks that's like a lifestyle game to them.
in. Yeah,
That's all they play, and that's great. I enjoy the game, but I probably enjoy the starter kits a lot more than I do the full on ASI. Like I don't buy the modules, but I'll buy the starter kits.
right, right. I still play the full meal deal, but it's if I'm playing an infantry only, or even an art like just a regular Western theater scenario, I don't have to do many rules dives, but take me to the jungle or something like that. Or just the other day, I was playing an HASL scenario with a pal, and I had fighter bombers. So, I mean, it was probably 20 years since I last looked at the rules
Yeah,
for
yeah,
fighter bombers. But that's just the way it goes. So anyway, so you cut your teeth on that, and then you play some other. You're in Maryland, so you're going to be playing some Avalon Hill games. I'm
yeah.
sure.
Certainly, mainly Avalon Hill games. Russian campaign, War at Sea, Victory in the Pacific. Learned a lot from those folks who beat me mercilessly, and so. But it was enjoyable. I wasn't in it for the win necessarily. I was in it for the experience and the narrative of the game, and it was just a lot of fun. And those guys they were all cool to me because they were 10 years older or so than me. They didn't have to be, but they were,
Right.
and I felt included, and so that was nice. It was a great experience, and then I left and joined the military. So then kind of came
Was
back.
it? Did you find there was much interest in war games in the military while you were there?
Um, yeah, well, not to the level that you would think, but there was at the rec center in one of all the posts that I went to. There was always a copy of Axis and Allies or Risk, so folks
Right.
were always willing to play that. So, and those were fun.
And then once you got out of the military, what did you end up doing?
Well, I was in a guard unit ultimately for till about '93. So I kind of came back and forth playing war games in the late '80s and '90s, and I started getting back into it again. Um, and I really didn't dive 100% into it, and gave up all my other hobbies that I had in the past. I see a guitar in the background. I did a band thing for a long time. Also, I played drums,
Yeah.
and after I kind of got through that, I jumped back into war games because it just met my schedule a lot better. And so I about 2004 or five, I started getting back into heavy wargaming again and getting into with a group, and we would go play meet weekly, and I started going to cons and things like that. So WBC was probably the one that I go to the most, which is out in East Coast U.S. Probably.
You are blessed for choice for conventions out on the East Coast.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot to go to, but if you ever, I would encourage anybody to give the World Board Gaming Championship a look, and consider going out if you're going to spend some money. It's it's actually 9 days, I think, but it's in a resort, and it's 24-hour gaming and a lot of tabletop stuff. No role playing. Not that I have anything against role playing, just it's mainly board games, and there's a lot of curmudgeon guys like playing a bunch of games.
I've always wanted to go. It's
Yeah.
I mean, when it was Avalon Con or Don Con, it was like it sounded like the Holy Grail of or Mecca for the place to go.
Yeah, I can't think of. I've been to a couple. Like I've been to Origins, and that's got an appeal for because there's just thousands of vendors to go and buy stuff from. But
Right.
from a gaming perspective, it's not as fun to me. This is probably about 1,700 people or so, maybe 1,800. It's maybe higher than that, and the like you could go to and play some of the monster games up that they have going, and some guys are into that. World at War, I believe, is what the or a World at War. I forget what it's God, I had to go look. I don't remember the name, but anyway, they have them set up and they're just playing it
All week.
That's all they're doing, and it's probably the only time they get to play that. And me, I like to play as many games as possible, and so that's why I don't like to commit to like 8-hour games, but sometimes
Yeah, I'm a bit more your style. When I go to a con, I rather than do one big thing for days, I want to play as many different games, learn some new games, meet some new people.
Right. Yeah, and so there's some tournaments that they have a lot of tournaments there as well. A lot of the classic war game tournaments that so I was like entering them and playing like a round or so, just kind of do that and or bow out after that, because I can't play 12 hours of war at sea or Russian campaign or something like that. I mean, I enjoy playing it like once. I played. I got excited. I did really well in a breakout Normandy game in the first round, and I said, "Oh my god, I got to play another 4 hours of this." I said, "Do you want to go on?" And you want to go on next? And the guy was like happy to take the
win.
I said, "Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you go do that. I'm gonna get a beer and some food."
Fair enough. So we've talked about the other two series, but the game that's really your baby with Lock and Load is Point Blank V for Victory. You're the designer.
Yes.
This came out of your brain. It's so somebody once described it to me recently as kind of a combo of if you took Upfront and Lock and Load Tactical and kind of smushed them together. That's kind of a loose approximation of what we've got with Point Blank. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think there's when it was first coming out and it was first being advertised, everyone went to the Upfront comparison, and if you're a designer and you're being compared to Upfront, it's heartbreaking, because you're never going to, your Upfront's a classic and a legend. You're never going to. I'd be very hard pressed to find anyone say, "Yeah, Upfront. Oh man, Point Blank blows it away," or whatever. Maybe some people feel like that, but I don't think they would really say it. I know.
Right. I get you. Upfront is like, it's sort of an unmatched game for lots of folks, and there's very few. Whereas, say, when Mark Herman invented the CDG with For the People, since then we had a bunch of CDGs. When Courtney Allen invented Area Impulse, that's exploded. But when Courtney Allen invented Upfront, we didn't see an explosion of that type of tactical card game. It sort of felt like he hit something really special, and nobody really wanted to mess with it. But I've looked at Point Blank, and it doesn't like the terrain is very much like up front, the playing of cards as terrain, but the combat system is very different, and
Yeah,
your
combat
action icon system is very different.
yeah. So um, what kind of started it was there was a republish of Upfront that everyone was getting on board with, that Valley Games one, and a lot of us got, well, we all got burned on it,
Burns,
and
yeah.
yeah. So I don't really want to comment on how I feel about it. I was disappointed, but I part of the appeal of Upfront is it's a market. It's an area of the market that has not been reproduced, and in any serious way, there has not been an attempt to build a tactical war game close to that level of organization. So Upfront was individual men, but you're operating them as a squad, and in Point Blank, they're squads. So each unit is a squad or a half
Right.
squad or an individual vehicle. So I thought when I was coming up with the idea, I said, how could I think this could fill a void in the market, because I can't think of any other game out there that was being put out that was even close to what Upfront was. So I didn't want to be an Upfront clone. It would have been very easy to do, and I would be explaining, why is the game so much like Upfront, and I didn't want to do that necessarily. I wanted some original mechanics, and I took some of the things that I didn't really like in Upfront. One of the things was getting screwed by terrain and things like that, and I wanted terrain to be more a part of the game, because when you're playing a card game like that, the battlefield becomes kind of static, and you don't have a lot of maneuverability in it. And I felt that a game should have more maneuverability. That's just why I designed the terrain systems the way it is. So that's why you could have a sector and a piece of terrain in it, but then that terrain could get changed out in
Right.
through the mechanics of the game. And some folks were, this is kind of cheesy, I can see a tiger and now I can't. And but I didn't want to micromanage the maneuverability of units. Units try to always find favorable cover, favorable positions. Try to stay out of sight of something that they don't think they can defeat, or get an advantage on something they think they can. And so I took a sector and described it as not like a hex, but a group of hexes. So
Right.
you find terrain in a group of hexes.
I find the terrain system really elegant in Point Blank.
Thank you.
For people who have played Upfront, whereas Upfront you might have guys in group A, B, and C, and across from the other fellow. What we have here in Point Blank is, you can play it using the provided map, or you could just lay it out on the table. But these sectors, you can move side to side, back and forth, much more easily than you can in Upfront. Upfront to move forward and back isn't that difficult, but to move side to side is a pain in Upfront.
You're in Group A or Group B, or and you're. I thought about that initially, trying to model that, and it wasn't working out very well. It was just too. It was just too abstract or kludgy. So initially, I didn't have a grid, a map board on it, because I wanted it just to be cards, because I figured that would be what it is. But it was so hard to explain. And I said, you know what? Let's just put a map board out there and then have them use that. And then as they get accustomed to playing, they can determine whether or not they want the map board or not.
I think that's exactly it. The map board that's provided is going to show you how it works, and then once you know how it works, you probably don't actually need that map board anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted it to be initially I always thought of like I like card games are intimate. You know, you can play it in a bar or something like that, and this didn't work out like that for me. On this, one of the funny stories of where we were developing it was I came up with the grid system, and I was explaining to Dave that look, I need probably five five row columns and about five rows on each side. So it was like 45 rectangles so big. So he made it so big so you could put the cards in there. But when you laid it out, it was like, oh my god, you needed like a gym floor to play play this. It was ridiculous. It was fun, like at a convention, to do that, something like that. But it was not something that someone wanted to probably have on their kitchen table. So I took great pains to try to get it to fit everything on 2.5 feet by 3.5 feet long, so you can have it on a kitchen table or a convention table. So now one of the ideas is that we're already seeing the prototypes for it is to make actual map tiles that you can lay out, so you can play smaller games. You don't need the whole thing.
Oh, the whole thing, right? Well, I know that when I've been messing around with it, if I'm playing a scenario that only starts with three columns, I just let the rest of the map hang off the side, hang over, and then I can use it on a smaller table. It just depends on which scenario you're playing.
Yeah. It's the map is still big for what it is, but it should fit on a table. And some, I've only had maybe one or two people say anything, negative about it, but I needed some organization for to explain the game, and I was with the tile system that Dave is looking to put out with the new expansion that we're working on right now, which is Point Blank Winter Victory. He may include those tiles with that game. So
I'll get to the expansion in a bit. You said earlier, the dream of like the card game that you can play in a bar and stuff. That's long been a dream, but I just don't find that we as wargamers tend to go to bars and sit around and play our war games when we just drink the beer.
Yeah, no. So when at cons, some of the hotels had bars, and it was always kind of a relaxing setting to go and play, some games in the bar and have a few drinks and talk with your friends. You were kind of in a public area, and you would, see people, coming in and out, and hey, come here, have a beer with us, and hey, jump in and play something, So that was always, I found that always appealing, but that was not that was not a criteria or a requirement for Point Blank. So
no, I don't think Upfront is a particularly good bar game either. It's
no, maybe the first scenario is.
Yeah, that's about it. But it's for one thing, I don't want to spill beer on my my Point Blank or my Upfront cards.
No, not today. Not a rare game like that. Although you can buy, I think, Upfront replacement cards from
there. Yeah, the War Game Vault, I think they're called. You can buy. They've reprinted it, and it's not the it's just they reprinted it as was. It's not all the new stuff that the Valley Games guys were going to do. But in your game, you have. I was really delighted to see that the Canadians are in the initial box. That never happens. You've got the Germans, the Americans, Brits, and then the Canadians. It's like, hey, we beat out the Russians for a change.
Yeah. So what happened is it was always going to be a West Front area game. So it was the time period was a little after D-Day and before Arnhem, and we put out the first version of the game was just Germans and U.S. and French resistance, and Dave was going to put it out on Kickstarter. So there were the Kickstarter, bonus things that you got to put out there. So he kind of said, well, why don't you put out some British Airborne, and why don't you put some Canadians in there, and so off it went, and we started building all of the Kickstarter add-ons. So they were support weapons and vehicles and things like that. So it wasn't like a full representation of British and Canadians, but it's enough to get you going. There's some good scenarios in there with the British and Canadians.
Yeah, totally. The second one I played was Ham and Jam. Had to get right. Yeah. Had to get those. I wasn't Canadians, but it was Brits. It's like there's so many series that I love that they never even get to the Commonwealth forces, and it's
right.
Breaks my heart.
Yeah, and trying to I put the Canadian Otter in there, which was their scout, their armored scout car, and the Vickers machine gun weapons team, and try to give them each a little bit of some uniqueness,
a little flavor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The it's a big box. It's a big heavy box. There's a lot of cards in there.
Yeah. 795, I believe.
That's a lot. Yeah, it's an amazingly heavy box for a box that really doesn't. There's no mounted map. It's just, that's all cards basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is the West Front box. I assume that the first expansion you talk about. What did you call it? Winter Victory, or
Point Blank Winter Victory.
And that I'm guessing that's going to be a Soviet box.
No, that's probably a true expansion. You'll need the game for that. It's about 12 scenarios, and it's set in December 44
Bulge.
in Bulge area.
Right.
And originally it was going to be just a bagged book or something like that, and then we decided that we were going to give some extra cards. So King Tiger 2 is in there. I think a Puma, and I think we added some of the M4 76s, M4 A3 76s, I believe is in there, and we added some mini cards like prepared positions and foxholes and things like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so now we're actually even thinking about adding aircraft. So we'll probably add those rules, and all those rules will be available in the actual module, but we may add them in.
So this is an expansion to V is for Victory, not a standalone game.
Not a standalone game, no.
Once you get to the Russians, that'll probably be more like its own standalone box.
Yeah, so Dave generally doesn't like to have expansions in general, which is, I'm surprised he wanted to do this as an expansion, but I don't want to give a lot. I don't want to do a standalone game that gives a player a bunch of repeat cards that they already have just because they can play a standalone game, because a lot of folks like to collect them. So I wouldn't really be too comfortable say, okay, well, you already have a bunch of M4 Shermans that you bought in the original game, and now you have the same exact cards in the Bulge game, along with the same exact infantry and all that. So I'd rather give them something different. So each new expansion of the game, when I air quotes expansion, will be a standalone game. So one of the ideas that we have on the drawing board is doing early war stuff. So Polish, French, Belgium, early British.
I love France 40 scenarios in any tactical game. That's right up my alley.
I was born in France.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was born in France. My mother is French. And an interesting war game tie. So because I was in that group that was play testing a lot of the early Avalon Hill games, up front I got to see the play test copy of that, and I got to play the Bonsai in its prototype format. Yep. But the general magazine was coming out with the French cards, I believe, for up front. and my mother provided all the names for it.
Oh, isn't that
Yeah.
nice?
Yeah.
All the names that didn't belong to some insider somewhere.
Yeah, there was a couple of there. So, like for instance, Neil Schlaffer has a very German name. He's naturally a German uh, card in the original game.
Yeah, and
So
I remember when I got the British one, there was Vassy, who I remembered as he was a guy that put out a long running magazine out of Britain, and he'd showed up in some Avalon Hill Generals issues as well, I think. But it was like, I know that name. That's not just something you got out of the phone book. But that's interesting. So your mom gave all the French names,
yep,
and somebody else
yep.
had to provide the Italian ones for.
Yeah, I guess. So surnames were important to me for in this game, and I didn't really want to kind of just pick, supporters of the company and things like that and put their names in there. And Dave has done that in the past with some of the counters, and a lot of people that are big supporters of Lock and Load were, lucky enough to get their name on a counter. So all the surnames that I provided for the Americans and the Germans and the Canadians and the leaders in general, I researched to try to get accurate surnames, not just of accurate Canadian or accurate German surnames, but accurate surnames of the time.
Right. Names that were popular at the time or possible at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think someone called me out on one of the Canadian ones. I forgot what the name of the card was. I could go look it up, but it was a French Canadian last name. I forget, and they said it was not of that, not from Quebec or whatever. So I don't know.
No, it sounded more French. It sounded more French than Quebec French.
Yeah, something like that. I think I have the card. What was the name of the? I don't want to hold up your show, but it was Tremblay. I think I spelled it wrong.
Oh, so Tremblay is. Oh, you said Tromley?
Tremblay, yeah.
You missed the B, maybe.
Yeah, something.
There should be a B after the M.
Yeah,
you can't get you can't get away with that one in Canada because there's also a very famous hockey player for the Montreal Canadiens named Tremblay.
Well, hopefully they won't stop me at the border if I.
No. So like I said, we're so happy to see Canadians in a base box of anything that you could have spelled all the names wrong and we'd still be happy just to see ourselves represented for a change.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's been some comments on some of the Board Game Geek forums that they were pleased that there was Canadians represented in the game so early out.
So after you do the bulge expansion, and I guess the like there's the whole business side too to see how it sells before you decide. But in a perfect world where it sells like gangbusters and it's like, okay, we're going ahead with this series, what do you do next after the bulge expansion?
So I think we're going to address the early war that's been discussed though. I think the working title is Point Blank First to Fight. So we'll be
all those great tin cans.
I know, yeah, I know. And that's one of the tie-ins to Lock and Load Tactical as and I'll circle back to my point. We talked about whether or not we should reinvent the combat system, and we said, well, we already have one. We have Lock and Load Tactical's combat system, and it works well, and we have a lot of unit stats and things like that we could use. So why not just reuse that? So that was sort of the strategy going into it. So a lot of the unit stats were derived out of the counters that are in the Lock and Load Tactical game for some of the units on the the cards, but just things like morale and firepower and things like
Right.
that. Because movement, we handle that in a different way. We handle range in a different way, and we also differentiate the different units out there with all the different icons that are on their cards. So
And that's not a part of the lock and load tactical.
no,
That icon system is your system.
yep,
That
yep,
because that's the other thing that really stands out about this game is that I call it the action icon system, for lack of a better word, but that you have about, I don't know, 15 or 20 different icons that can show up on either on the squad or the leader card or the vehicle, or else also on the action cards, the cards that you draw to that form your hand. And
yep.
there just seems to be a lot more to do, a lot more variety of detailed things that you can do than, if somebody was trying to make a comparison to up front. This is nothing like up front. This is a whole
No.
different system.
Yeah, so the action cards that you have 108 action cards, and there will be you'll have a hand of them, and each action can order any unit on the board, whether the icon exists on the card or not. And where the reason for the icons on the actual units is because there's a system that you can discard a card and play one of the icons on the actual unit. And if you do, the unit is penalized by being what we call spent, tapped. If you're familiar with Magic, it can be you tap 90 degrees, and it just has to be ready. So it's there are a lot of card games, and not going to go into all the different ones, but there are card games where you have a hand of cards and you can't do anything but discard. And so then you build your stress level, and hopefully you don't get annihilated while you're trying to get the right cards again to go and do something. So I wanted to give the player the ability to be able to do something if they didn't have a card or set of cards that they could use, and some options.
And there's also a card that you can use just to activate an icon on a individual squad's card too, right?
Right. So there's a action. It's called a unit action. It looks like a little lightning bolt.
Yeah.
And you can order one of the units and play any action icon that's on the actual unit card.
But I love that card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can either do like if you have a fire card, you can order everybody in a sector to fire. So it's kind of a group order that comes down. Everybody's gonna fire. Or you can play the action card where you're ordering just one unit to do something, maybe a weapon team, maybe a vehicle. And then if you don't have any of those cards and you really need to fire something, you can just toss a card. It's called a spend action. You discard the card and you spend the unit by tilting it sideways. And then
so if you use the unit action card, you don't have to spend it.
That's correct.
So there's just that. If you don't have the right card, you're only screwed insofar as you're going to have to spend a unit to use them, which is which keeps the game going, keeps you doing the things you want to do, but still gives you the penalty. It's not like the cards are not meaningless. The cards are still incredibly valuable because you don't have to use this spend action to do what you want,
or just keep discarding them until you get the right cards.
Yeah.
There is a mechanic to do what I call a hand flush, which is once per turn you're allowed to discard your entire hand, and it can be a little cheesy if you're trying to run out the clock, because the clock is based on the deck running out the deck, but you can only do it once per turn.
And it's only 5 cards. It's not. It's like, and if the game is 2 or 3 decks long, that's still like it's a very, what I'm trying to say. It's a small amount of cheese. It's not
a small amount of cheese. Yeah, I mean, if you're down to the last couple cards and it's close and you're winning, then maybe do a hand flush and
in my solo plays of it so far, I've never. There's always been something I wanted to do that, like I never did the hand flush because it was just like, no, I have to do this. I have to either press the attack, or else I have to get myself out of there because it's a mess.
Yeah. No, I think that there's always something to do, and you're never in a spot where you can't do something. So that was the whole strategy of making the game in general, was so a player is never frustrated where I can't do anything. I hear that all over the place sometimes when we're playing. I can't do anything. Well,
Yeah, I think it's more helpful for new players to never have to be never be able to say that. I think experienced players say of a game like Combat Commander, new players say, I lost because I had bad cards, I couldn't do anything. But once you become more experienced, you know how to deal with
right.
poor hands
I
a
love
little better.
Combat Commander. Combat Commander is a wonderful game. I enjoy playing that a lot, and
It's just the one I thought of where I hear people where I hear newbies say, "Oh, I just had terrible cards. I couldn't do anything."
yeah, when you have command confusion and you have two of those in
Yeah.
your hand or something like that, and you're like, oh,
You
man,
have the artillery request cards, but you have no arty to request.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. There's a
yeah.
couple cards like that.
You gotta that's I find that's part of the fun of the game is getting out of those kind of jams.
Yeah, I don't dislike it, but I I I, I didn't want to leave that in this game, so
Right.
wanted
Well,
to be more.
there's also the thing that it comes up in this game where it's like all your cards are maybe cover cards or um, recon cards or movement cards or whatever, and you're in position to fire. So there is you still have the frustration. You can just do something about it. So I think you've kept the frustration in, but with the spend action, you've given people a little way out of it to take the edge off that.
Just a little way out. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you may still be frustrated, but you can still do something.
So you got the expansion. Then if all things go well, we're going to go to the early war, which I think is just fantastic. That going to the early war so soon is as surprising to me as having the Canadians. I'm so happy with the direction that you're going. It's like I've got nothing against the East Front, but it's like we've got 60 bazillion games that like every series seems to start there. It was so refreshing. This one didn't even start there, so that's great. But so we sort of got a little bit of a roadmap for what you want to do with this series. Do you have other things that you're working on design wise that's like, okay, well, when I'm not working on Point Blank, this is what I kind of have got up my sleeve for maybe down the road.
Yeah, I had a couple things in my bottom drawer, but one of the ones that kind of resurrected was this game I call Take Ground. Trouble in the East. Sorry, it's a Eastern Front
That's all right.
theme game, but it's a card game, but it's a easier. It's a deck building World War II game. I oddly enough, I never played Undaunted, so I hear that's a deck builder game. But this is a deck builder game. It's a victory points winning game where you're trying to take ground or take territories, and then you have victory points for destroying units, and you get victory points for having cards in your hand that you recruit because you recruit out of a reinforcement pool. And
What sort of a scale is it?
well, it's sort of abstract, but I guess you could probably say anywhere between platoon or company.
So so the cards don't equal men, or do they?
No, so this one uses actual dice. So a tank unit may let's say a T-34 may have like for an attack, it may roll a 10-sided die and an 8-sided die, and you roll that together, and then you take the highest result, and that's your result. Then you have a defensive roll. So if you're firing on, say, infantry, they may defend on 2 6-sided dice. So they roll maybe 2 6-sided die, and you compare the results. If they take a hit, I have the numbers superimposed around the edge of the card. So if you take a damage, you would tilt the card to get the to signify the next damage.
Oh yeah, it's sort of using cards a bit like blocks.
Yeah, exactly. But the cards are visible. The whole point is to take is to take ground, is to take the different locations, and then I added some extra flavor into that by provide like sets. So there's like sets of terrain. So if you get a set of terrain, let's say a forest clearing and a forest path or something together, and they're the same, you'll get extra points for winning those those things together. So I have it being reviewed right now, and it is. I won't name the company because I don't. They haven't committed to it yet, so I don't really want to name the company. But I pitched it to Dave first, and it's not that Dave didn't want to put it out. It's it's just the schedule for if it was going to get put out was way down the list. Talking
Right, you could get it published quicker somewhere else.
yeah, and I think it's just it's a quick game. I mean, when I say quick, it's maybe 8 pages of rules or
Right.
9 pages of rules. I didn't want to write another game that was 90-page rule book. I need to take a break from that. But,
I'm with you. It's when I think about how a game like Panzer Blitz was like, it's not even really 8 pages. It was just like a fold out of
right,
3 or 4 pages, and
like a map you buy at a gas station.
yeah, exactly. And that gave us endless hours of play.
I enjoyed Panzer Blitz a lot.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I enjoyed Panzer Leader even more.
Yeah, I like Panzer Leader also.
Well, it's great you have a relationship with Dave where he'll let you take your designs elsewhere if needs be, right?
Yeah. Well, he understands, and he's got a lot of things that he's been putting out, and he's got a lot of designers that he's he has me on another assignment as more of a operational level game that I'm working on too, and it's going to be area movement. I'm not really allowed to say anything about it, but
that's cool. You've got me hooked already. I'm also intrigued because it seems like so much of a focus of your career so far has been tactical games. So, not that I mean the very first area impulse game was basically a tactical game. Those Storm over Arnhem was squads and individual AFVs, but it's sort of grown out from that. But if this is operational, is this your first operational game then?
Yes, I would say it's probably it's my first, and it is going to be area movement, but it's not going to be like the other area movement games. I'm going to experiment, and we need to play test this a little further. But there's a lot of folks out there who can design those area movement games a lot better than I can. Mike Ranella's games are streamlined and tuned. He's really good at those. So I wouldn't really want to try to recreate something, just some battle that hasn't been done yet. But I've seen a lot of people attempt to do some area movement games, a lot of international companies, some Japan and things like that. But I think this one will be sort of a combination of nations at war, chit pull kind of tactics and some simpler combat mechanics, no sunset die or anything like that. But
so when you say area movement, do you also mean like the area impulse system, or when you say no sunset die, is it still like but with the impulse system?
It's an impulse system. It'll be unit based, so meaning each unit will be represented by a card or a chit, and then you'll pull that unit, and all of its units will go, and a lot of the units will be all in one area, so it's not going to be like spread. It's not going to be like a core. You have to activate the core, and you're activating like 5 areas, but it could be multiple areas that are activated at once.
I've tricked you into telling us more about it than you probably meant.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Well, good. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about while I have you on the line?
Just a little bit about the origin of Point Blank.
I'd love that. That would be great.
Yeah. So I came up with the idea around 2017, and I started working on a prototype. and I had never met Dave yet at this point. So I was telling him about the game, and we were going to meet. I was taking my youngest son on a college visit to Dayton, Ohio, for a college, and then on our way back, we were going to stop at Origins and hang out there with Dave and his crew. And got there, and I said, "Hey, brought the game." I said, he's like, "Great, let's play it." So he set up in a ballroom not in the convention center, but in the hotel we were all staying at. And it was in this big, huge abandoned ballroom. We were playing it out, and we played the game, and I asked Dave, I says, "So what do you think?" And he's like, he has a very Staten Island accent, so I don't know if New York style Staten Island accent. And he's like, "Well, I don't know, it may be okay. I'll have to think about it. I'm not sure." It was all this. I was kind of, I didn't say I was devastated or anything like that, but I was sort of
A little deflated,
a little disappointed, and that he didn't love it, and so we took it out on the floor of the where the wargaming area is at Origins. It's this sort of side hall that they have for all of the grognards. And there was a couple folks from the Ohio Wargamers there, and got them to play. So set up, and the two guys played it, and they were just having a blast playing this. They just were loving it. And I looked at Dave and I said, "Well, these guys like it." He's like, "Ugh." I said, "Well, I guess I got to put it out now." So that kind of gave me the green light to go forward from there. So he was real supportive after that, and we went through various different prototypes, and we hired an artist, Sean Logan, who did all the artwork on it. All the art actually is actual pictures and photos from World War II, and they're painted over and colorized. So
right, so manipulated sort of real photographs.
Yeah. So one of the things, and I'm going to tell him myself, I got an email about one of the units on there about this card right here. And,
infantry squad, the American infantry squad card. Yeah.
Right. So this is, a Western Front game, but this is not a Western Front uniform. This is a Marine from the Pacific.
Right.
So I didn't really have a lot of art control. I looked at the card, and I'm not so much into the history that I know you can recognize instantaneously this uniform doesn't belong. Or some, there's some famous photos too of those, but that was one thing that got called out. So that was, maybe we'll change the infantry.
That it's like 0.1% of the audience will spot those things, but our hobby definitely has dudes in it that are that 0.1% for sure.
Yeah. But if you were to get a card like, say, like the Panther here, this is a Panther from the game.
Right.
That is an actual photo of a real Panther that colorized. So the camouflage pattern may not be exactly from the photo, but it's
they're good looking cards.
Yeah, I know.
It's funny how you get nitpicked. I was I posted a video of just an unboxing video of a World War I flight game that was coming out recently, and got a comment right away about, well, that plane, that's a training plane, that's an American training plane, that shouldn't have been that wasn't even there in 1917.
Right.
It's just like it's just the box cover, Try the game.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing it to be mean spirited or anything like that, but they they pointed it out, and it's one of those areas of detail that I won't miss again.
Right. So. It's also it's that connection to the miniatures side of our hobby. I'm not a miniatures guy at all, but the people who are into miniatures, they know that detail inside and out and backwards.
Oh, it is amazing to hear the people nitpick something or whatever. I think the most I hear about it is in movies. Like someone will say, "Oh, I saw this movie," and they were saying, "Oh, the road wheels weren't the same." So like I think we were in a discussion about Kelly's Heroes and they,
Right.
how they did try to do a really good job at mocking up a Tiger tank, but I think it was a T-34 that they were
Yeah,
using.
exactly. It's like I don't know that there's many tigers that were still running.
No, I think there's only one that's running. They used it in Fury.
Right. Yeah.
At
So so if you were, in the great flurry, the great deluge of World War II movies that came out in the 50s and 60s, it's not like they had endless supply. Like there was a lot of surplus, but there wasn't a lot of good German surplus in terms of vehicles.
No, there wasn't. But now, in the later years, they try to do a really good job with the German half tracks and a lot of the German armor. And matter of fact, I think there's a Russian movie. I think it's called October, and it was like a 10-hour war saga, and they did a really good job.
I suppose there's a lot of CGI can be done now too.
Oh, today, yeah, for sure. But anyway, after we got the green light, we put it together, and then we did a Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter was I think it did moderately well. I think overall we maybe had almost 500 backers, which isn't bad. And then what happened is as we started doing more promos and things like that, and a lot of help from all the folks out there doing unboxings and things like that, we started getting more interest out there. And then people started doing some playthroughs and things like that. So we ended up selling all of them. So we ended up getting, we put out 1,000 copies, and we were fortunate enough to sell almost out of all of them. There may be a couple left, but not a lot.
Will there be or has there been, or will there be a second print run then, or?
The plan is that there will be, and we'll probably not as it's a standalone Kickstarter, but we'll probably put it in conjunction with another Kickstarter. And I say Kickstarter, Lock and Load uses GameFound now, so that's their.
Right. But say when the first expansion comes out, you could back that, and then there'd be an option to also get the original game at the same time.
Get the point blank, and we'll reprint it anyway, because I think there's some distributors and things like that want to get another round of it.
Yeah, my friendly local game store here in Calgary, which is a pretty good one, they have got a good selection of Lock and Load stuff. So I can't say that about all the not all the even all the American companies don't all make it across the border. So I'm happy when they do.
Yeah, well, Canada is the toughest country right now to get Lock and Load like Kickstarter products over to their supporters. So they had a distributor in the past, but they don't now. So I think that's one of the problems. And they, in order to ship directly into Canada, you have to pay, I believe, a huge VAT tax or something like that for on top of the game. So, just to ship the game may cost someone $40 or $50 or maybe even $60 to get the game to them. And some people will pay that, I guess, but most in the United States, we're sending it flat rate, and it's it's $20 or $22, something like that.
Yeah, it's weird when I order games here. Sometimes I get hit with a customs or duty fee, and sometimes I don't. It feels like it's just completely at the mercy of whatever customs inspector is looking at as it comes across the border.
Yeah. So we had a lot of support with distribution from Dan from No Enemies Here. I don't know if you know that podcast or not. Yeah. Yep. So he helped us out.
Yeah. Montreal, good guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He came down to WBC once. He was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he is. He's great. And I think he might not be the only person that he's helped get stuff across the border. So that might be Dan's sideline is helping American producers make their way through the labyrinth of Canadian customs.
Yeah, I think you probably would support maybe, hey, I can handle maybe 20, 30 copies of a game, but I don't think you can do hundreds. Yeah,
Right,
so
right.
it'd be a little hard.
Well, like I say, I see your guys' stuff on the shelves out here in Calgary. So that's a I don't know if that's from stock from before you lost your distributor. I hope you find another one
Yeah.
because it just helps to have stuff on the shelves.
Well, they're open, so if you know of anybody, please shoot me an email and I will get it into the right hands and they can
Oh
reach
yeah,
out and
yeah.
contact.
I always will. I'm
Yeah.
good friends with the owner at the big store here, and they're a huge store, so they're really open to finding new stuff all the time. But you guys aren't new to them, so that'll all
No,
be
that's
good.
good. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have to do a lot of smooth talking.
No, exactly. Well, this all sounds really exciting, Sean. I look forward to playing Point Blank some more, and maybe I can get you back sometime. Maybe we could do a video where you teach the game a little bit or something like that.
Yeah, so we've been doing something called Friday Night Fights, and with Devin from Lock and Load, and he hosts. He goes under the original Grognard, the original OG, and we've been playing Tabletop Simulator. So
Yep.
that could be a good vehicle to, you know, if you want to play and just learn the game a little easier. I can certainly take you, set up a scenario in advance and take you through it and teach you, and be more than happy to do that.
Well, we'll see if we can work that out down the line because
Yeah,
I think people would be excited to see what it looks like on the table, even if it's the tabletop simulator version.
yeah. The Tabletop Simulator is dead on, and we have a lot of the Winter Victory cards already in there because we've been playtesting the new scenarios through there. So
Will there be a vassal module as well, or just tabletop simulator?
so we have a gentleman working on some of the Vassal stuff, but I don't think the Vassal module's ready for the Point Blank yet.
Right.
Which is a good reminder. I have to reach out to them. Oh, and on another note, so there is a company that Dave has enlisted to computerize the game. So there's a computer version of Point Blank coming out at
Oh
some
wow!
point in the future. Yeah, so I've
Like
seen,
with an AI.
yeah, AI, playing an AI, and honestly, you could probably use the flowchart, the solo AI flowcharts,
Right.
um, which is another thing that I put together, and I did all the solo flowcharts for Lock and Load Tactical.
Right.
So it was kind of a natural fit for Point Blank,
Yeah, I
and
haven't tried. I just played both sides in my play so far because
yeah, you
yeah, you got to learn the
whatever,
game first before you do it.
right, whatever's fun for you. That's
Well, I
the
look
thing.
forward to playing the solo bots. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, and the solo bots are not to go drone on too much about it, but there's a difference between. There's a lot of solo systems that I draw a card, react to it, but this is more of an AI. So it depending on what's going on the ground, it'll react to what's going on the ground instead of you reacting to a card pool or something like that.
Does it work? I found in some of, of these sorts of bots where they work better on defending than attacking. Is it, or is there? Do you find any difference in the way it plays?
So the AI is kind of carved up into defensive posture and offensive posture. So there's an offensive flowcharts and there's defensive flowcharts. I've played, both several, many times, and sometimes the offensive bot wipes me out, and sometimes doesn't. And But there is a difference, and I think defense is probably easier for most players in general, if you're beginning or whatever, because you have to wait for people to basically come to you and react.
Right. It's more reactive than
So
active.
I can see the AI maybe being more harder to play if it's on defense. So
Well, great. I look forward to look forward to playing the solo bots once I'm feel more confident with the game proper.
yeah, excellent, excellent.
Great to talk to you, Sean.
Yeah,
Best
great.
of luck with the game. And
Yeah, thank you, Grant. I appreciate it.
and I'm sure we'll talk again down the road as I get farther into both Point Blank and all the other stuff you good folks at Lock and Load are putting out.
Hey, well, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
I definitely have to find time to get Sean back to demo Point Blank. I've got a handle on the basics now, but a video of a playthrough either on TTS or Vassal would be amazing. Right, so let's talk about a game. Commands and Colors Napoleonics. This is one of the games that I've played the most after ASL and Commands and Colors Ancients. The reason I've played so much is probably the same for Ancients. It's so quick and easy to do a turn via PBM on Vassal, so it's a breeze to always have a few games on the go. I thought it would be timely to discuss it now as GMT is repackaging the series. In an effort to reduce duplication and lower costs, the first 5 volumes are being repackaged into 2 volumes, and then volumes 6 and 7 are being combined into a single volume, which is great news for anyone just getting into the system. But for those of you with incomplete collections, GMT is reprinting all the original volumes one last time for one last big sell-off. I described Commands and Colors Ancients way back in the first episode of the podcast, so I won't go into much detail here. And then I'll just describe it a bit and then finish with some key differences between Nappy and Ancients. Commands and Colors Napoleonics is a tactical board game that simulates the battles of the Napoleonic era. It's part of the Commands and Colors series, which is known for its easy-to-learn gameplay and its tactical depth. So, a brief overview of the rules. The game board represents the battlefield. It's divided into 3 sections: left flank, center, and right flank. Each player controls a historical army consisting of infantry, cavalry, and artillery units. There's command cards. Each player has a hand of these cards, which dictate the actions they can take during a turn. These cards allow you to order specific types of units in designated sections of the battlefield. Often one side will have more cards than the other, simulating some advantage in leadership or situation that the original combatants had. On a player's turn, they play a command card and they choose an order. The order specifies the type of units that can be activated and the number of units that can be ordered. Often the card will dictate where on the map board units can be activated, the right flank, center, or left flank. The player activates the specified units, paying attention to restrictions of the orders card. Typically, you'll order a set number of units and then move them and or initiate combat with them. Melee combat occurs when activated units attack enemy units in adjacent hexes, while ranged combat depends on range and line of sight. Combat involves rolling dice to match symbols. That is, if you're attacking infantry units, you want to roll infantry symbols on the special dice. Likewise for attacking cavalry or artillery units. Successful hits may cause casualties or force the opponent to retreat. The game is won generally by accumulating victory medals awarded mostly for eliminating enemy units, but sometimes also for capturing specific objectives. The number of medals required for victory is predetermined depending on the scenario. There's also special rules. The game includes special rules for leaders, elite units, artillery units, and more. The special rules add depth and historical accuracy to the gameplay. And then, of course, the scenarios. The game offers a multitude of various historical scenarios representing famous battles of the Napoleonic era. Each scenario has specific victory conditions and unique terrain features. There's a couple of big changes from Commands and Colors Ancients to Commands and Colors Napoleonics. In the Ancients game, a medium infantry unit, or any unit, keeps attacking with the same number of dice until it's eliminated. So a 4-block medium unit always attacks with 4 dice or 5 dice or whatever it is, even when it's down to a single block. In Napoleonics, though, the number of dice you roll in an attack are dependent not just upon the type of unit you're attacking with, but also on how many blocks are still present in that unit. For example, a standard infantry unit generally rolls 1 dice per block, so it's 4 dice when it's a full 4-block unit, but after it's taken a couple losses and it's down to 2 blocks, it only rolls 2 dice. The other big difference is there's no longer light, medium, and heavy units. Now the big differentiations are between infantry, cavalry, and artillery, with several variations of each, of course. And there's also many little differences between units and nationalities. That's one of the things that makes Commands and Colors Nappy so fun. There's also special Napoleonic rules for forming a square when infantry is attacked by cavalry, and for combining artillery with infantry for combined arms attack, and a few other things depending on the nationality you're playing. Because like Ancients, there's several expansions that bring new nationalities, and a couple of expansions for creating multiplayer or extra large games. But the best expansion, in my view, is the Generals, Marshals, and Tacticians box. It introduces an update to the original deck of cards, as well as a second deck called the Tacticians deck. These cards aren't used every turn, but give you special tweaks to play from time to time. Things like ignoring the penalty for moving before attacking, or being able to get back a block or two that have been lost. Since switching to playing with the Tacticians deck, I'd never go back. And it's no surprise that many later releases in the Commands and Colors series come along with a Tacticians deck standard in their core box. Tricorn does this, I think Medieval does this, Samurai does this. The Tacticians deck is great. Commands and Colors Napoleonics combines strategy, luck, and historical flavor in its gameplay. The rules are designed to be accessible, allowing players to quickly grasp the mechanics while still offering tactical choices and challenges. Highly recommended both for its ease of play and its multitude of scenarios. And the Vassal module is in the hands of Mark Benson at the moment. He's really upgraded it with a ton of automated features and keeps tweaking it and finding bugs, chasing bugs, and keeping the thing in top-notch shape. Okay, bouquets. Well, this month, let's say hats off to IKEA, as I needed a couple more uprights and more shelves. Those who have been following the podcast and my journey with IKEA will know that I'm just joking about the hats off part. Naturally, they had the shelves that I needed, but not the uprights, so I have games on the floor again. My wife has long since given up believing I'll ever get everything put away, and maybe she's right. Finally, parting shots. Someone recently on Twitter tried to tell me that Avalon Hill mostly cherry-picked from other companies' good designs. I found that an incredible remark. Well, I agree that Avalon Hill did republish some great games to bring them to a wider audience. They contribute immeasurably to the hobby with their own designs. I mean, they invented hex and counter wargaming to start with. Combat results tables, terrain effects charts, hexes for movement. Yeah, they published Panzer Blitz, but not as a cherry-picking of someone else's game. Panzer Blitz had never been published before, other than as a loose idea, but because SPI couldn't do it at that point. Avalon Hill invented area impulse games. They invented CGGs, Squad Leader, Third Reich. Had anyone ever done a grand strategic game before? I'm not sure. Upfront, the greatest war game ever made, for Christ's sake. The General magazine, and that's just off the top of my head. As Volko Runke recently pointed out, Avalon Hill created whole categories of war games with their innovations. So I'm not buying that they mostly cherry-picked other companies' good designs. They led, they innovated. And if they also brought some Jedco and Battleline games to larger audiences, well, great. Just remember, there'd be no Jedco or Battleline without Avalon Hill. Anyway, so much for the rant. That's it for another episode of Pushing Cardboard. I hope you had a good time. Please spread the word and drop by the website or Discord server. Let me know what you'd like to hear more of or less of. I can take it. Ask a question you'd like to hear answered on the podcast. I'll see what I can do. Thanks for listening.